Let's go. Mr. Prime Minister, Mike Myers, what are you doing here? I just thought I'd come up and check on things.
You live in the States.
Yeah, but I'll always be Canadian.
But you live in the States.
Yeah, so?
Do you remember Mr. Dressup?
The children's show on CBC?
What were the names of Mr. Dressup's two puppet friends?
Casey and Finnegan?
Bud the
Spud?
Howie?
Meeker?
Capital Saskatchewan?
Regina?
Tragically?
Pip?
You're a defenseman defending a 2-on-1. What do you do?
Take away the pass, obviously.
What are the 2 seasons in Toronto?
Winter and construction.
Wow. You really are Canadian.
Yeah. But let me ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, will there always be a Canada?
There will always be a Canada.
All right. Elbows up.
Elbows up.
That was comedian Mike Myers, a proud Canadian, appearing in an ad for the Liberal Party with Prime Minister Mark Carney last month ahead of national elections in Canada. Meek, I've got to say, it is, I mean, I don't usually follow who's running the Bank of England every week,
right.
So I didn't realize, like, Mark Carney's been in the spotlight a lot before, and I understood that he'd been involved in banking for a very long time, and had been an important voice in economic issues across the globe. But when I first saw that commercial, I was struck by the fact that actually Mike Myers was Mark Carney's straight man. And he carried that off so well and has such an ease about him. And also, you know, Canada, as our good friend J-Mart said yesterday, had been borrowing a lot of division, a lot of the tough tactics from America in their politics. And Mark Carney, you just see him in that ad. You see him on the campaign trail. And this is a guy who's calm. He is, he's connected with voters. And he's extraordinarily competent. It is Canada going in a direction actually opposite than how America's been going for the past 20 years with their politicians. It's really telling. You could tell he's an extraordinarily effective political talent for this time.
Right.
But again, that commercial, one of the best political ads I've seen in a very long time, and not because there's an SNL star in there, but because the real star of that ad is a guy whose name was on the ballot.
Right. Never in politics, and yet he's a pro and very comfortable with this moment. Mark Carney has won a full term as Canada's Prime Minister, marking a stunning turnaround for the country's Liberal Party. Carney called for an election after he was sworn into the position following Justin Trudeau's resignation. As of now, it is still unclear if Liberals, who have been in power for almost a decade, will be able to secure a majority government. When Carney took the stage to address his supporters last night, he mentioned Canada's relations with the U.S.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen. But we also must recognize the reality that our world has fundamentally changed. We are once again at one of those hinge moments of history. Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The system of open global trade, anchored by the United States, a system that Canada has relied on since the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for a country for decades, is over. These are tragedies, but it's also our new reality. We are over the shock of the American betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons.
But you're going to take it forward.
We have to look out for ourselves. And above all, we have to take care of each other.
All right, let's bring in the U.S. national editor at the Financial Times, Ed Luce, who's here to talk about the column he has up on the FT right now. But Ed, you're also writing about Mark Carney, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this moment. And might Democrats look to the North for a model on an answer to Trump?
Well, I should declare, Mika, that I've known Mark since he was a PhD student in England in the early 90s. His wife, Diana, who's English, said, come out for a drink with me with this Canadian doctoral student. And so I've known Mark for 35 years. And I have to say, I never expected to see this day, not because he's not supremely qualified to be Canada's Prime Minister, but because his background as governor of the Bank of England, having worked for Goldman Sachs in New York, all of these sort of smell of globalism to electorates that, you know, are nowadays really on the lookout for people who are allegedly elitist. And I think in the space of a few weeks, Trump turned those electorally suspect credentials, very substantive credentials, but electorally suspect ones, from being toxic into being absolutely key qualifications to manage Canada in an international climate where the economy is parlous and where you need somebody who knows how things work and what he's doing. And so it is extraordinary to see this. He's really well qualified. I just didn't expect him to win. And yesterday was the first time, he's 60, it was the first time in his life he'd ever stood for public office.
Ed, are you surprised by the speed with which this happened? As we said a minute ago, conservatives just a couple of months ago were up by 20 points in the polling for this election. And then as President Trump began his attacks on Canadian sovereignty, continuing to talk about Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States of America, and then, of course, the 25% tariffs, it really galvanized a national movement inside Canada to push back against America. But boy, it happened in just a couple of months.
It did. And I mean, his opponent, who lost his seat, by the way, Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader, who'd been forecast to be Prime Minister, you know, as almost a done deal for more than a year, a coming landslide, etc. His opponent had this sort of Me Too Trump line, Canada first. Carney changed it into Canada strong. And thereby became the patriot in this race. And Poilievre, because he'd already sort of presented himself as essentially a Trumpian, he was in a prison not of his own making. And when Trump starts threatening, you know, Canada's economic prosperity, it's very difficult for Poilievre to repudiate Trump because he's already presented himself as Trumpian. And it ought to be said, we're seeing similar dynamics happen in the Australian election, which is happening in a couple of weeks. And this is without Trump threatening to annex Australia. So even there, we're seeing the Conservative, they're actually called the Liberal Party, confusingly, in Australia, but the Conservative Liberal Party leader, Peter Dutton, is the Trumpian in the race. He's not doing well. He's been sinking for the last 100 days, and I believe that's no coincidence.
And Carney, despite being from the same party, will be an entirely different kind of prime minister than was Justin Trudeau. So